and welcome. It's been 5 years for Nick and Isaac at Locked On Mavs. I did my take one. I said that in third person, and Isaac freaked out. Thought it was hilarious. So, May 31st is our 5-year anniversary with Locked On. So we decided to do a bonus video where we went through and we're going to react to our very first episode, or at least parts of it that we did. And we're going to talk about just how this started, how we started doing Locked On Mavs, how we've grown, some big moments throughout it, how our lives have changed. We'll talk about where the Raccoon Squad name came from and all that we call our listeners and all that. So, Isaac, do we want to just start with our very first episode? This is May 31st, 2017. So this is pre-Luka. This is pre-pandemic. This is pre Dirk's retirement. This is pretty like a lot of stuff. Yeah. Pretty good microphones for both of us. High five for our audio improvements for both of us. This is pre me being good at introductions on podcasts.
This is so, little backstory context to this. We've talked about this briefly on different episodes before, but Nick and myself, we knew each other a little bit, obviously through Mav stuff. We met each other, I don't know, 2 years before this. Maybe.
I always tell people that your first day covering the Mavericks was my first day covering the Mavericks in person. The first practice that you and I went to, we both showed up with our backpacks, and it was like the first day of school. We both kind of looked at each other like, you know where you're going? I was like, kind of. Do you know where you're going? Kind of. We walked into the Mavericks practice facility, or the practice gym inside the American Airlines Center, which kind of stood there, and then we talked to a couple players and did the media scrum and stuff. And then like that first full year, it was just like you and me, and we'd run into each other a little bit. We'd sit by each other at games sometimes, but it's not like we were like super tight even.
Yeah, so we, you obviously did stuff with Mavs Fanatic. You guys will hear this in the intro here.
That's now Dallas Sports Fanatic, by the way.
Yeah, so we had done one podcast together before this episode, and it was in the basement of a building at DBU.
Yeah, Dallas Baptist University.
So we did this episode for Mavs Fanatic, and then I don't know how many months after that, this opportunity comes up for you, and you give me this call or you tell me about it. I call you. I'm coming out of a John Legend concert with my wife here in DFW, and I just remember that conversation on the way home for us of, all right, I'm a night owl already, babe. Like, what do you like? It's just like 20 minutes. Let's just see how long it works. Yeah. Like, let's just see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, I don't have to keep doing it. And that was 5 years ago.
So I'll take it a step back even further. So I was still at Dallas Baptist University. I was in the broadcast department. I was working in the broadcast department. And one of the things that they had at DBU that I'm pretty sure is they still have is this radio studio that was down in the basement that some alumni gave them like basically a blank, honestly, gave them like a blank check to like build a radio studio.
Hey, if you are that alumni and you want to give us a blank check, I was gonna say, we have some dreams and goals for covering sports that if you want to write that check.
But they bought all this crazy equipment and incredible broadcast level mics and like the mics that they use on like the fan and like all that and the ticket. And so we would go down there, and me and Josh Dack, who was on the fan for a little while, Chris Four, and Nathan Kane would go down there and record what we called the Seeing Stars podcast, and that probably still lives on iTunes or Spotify somewhere, where we wanted to do each person had a sport. So like I was Mavericks, Josh was Rangers, Nathan was Cowboys, and then Chris covered the Wings and FC Dallas, or he covered the Stars and FC Dallas. And then Josh and I would talk about Wings every once in a while, and we would try to cover every single professional Dallas sport. And so I was doing that show, and so I sent that show to David Locke. When David Locke put out on his Twitter, he's like, "Hey, I'm starting this podcast network. Does anybody want to host some of these shows? These are the shows I'm looking for." And one of them was Mavericks. And so I got his email. I sent him an email, sent him Seeing Stars and all the stuff that we were doing there. Sent him my, stuff about, covering the Mavericks, like getting credentialed for covering the Mavericks. I got credentialed before I even was on Locked On Mavs. And so I sent him that email. He didn't pick me. He ended up picking Jake Kemp and Mike Marshall, who were way more established and talented than I was at that point. And so that was a great choice by him. They went through it for a full season, basically, the end of the season, and the end of April. They decided, hey, this is not for us, this 5-day-a-week thing. I don't blame them. We weren't making a ton of money back then for sure.
No.
And so they were looking for a new host after that. I didn't know that those guys had quit Locked On Mavs, but David went back and found my original email from like August of 2016 or like even farther back than that. Went back and found that email, responded, "Hey, are you still interested in this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so it was just me at first. He said, "Hey," so I called him on the phone and said, "Hey, you can do this solo. You can do this with a co-host." And I know that my talent is not like, I'm not Colin Cowherd, right? I need to have somebody there because I'm really good at bouncing off of people. And so I was like, I need somebody on there. And so I started thinking through people, and like, Josh wasn't going to do it with me from Seeing Stars. He wasn't interested in that. There was nobody at Mavs Fanatic that I was interested in doing it with. I started like running through the names, but then I was like, you know what? I would love to do a podcast like this with Isaac, because I really get along with Isaac. We have, similar backgrounds, and that he was going to school for ministry. I was involved in ministry a lot. We had that involved. We had we talk about fake trades all the time, and I knew that we could get it. We could talk about that a ton. And so I just thought and I also, honestly, I don't know if I've told you this, Isaac, but
we got to have a friend moment.
I honestly was like, I kind of want to be friends with this guy. And so I was like, let me do a podcast with him so we can be friends. And so that's when I called you up and I was like, hey, would you want to do this with me 5 days a week? Every single night we would do this podcast. It was a crazy ask. We didn't know how much money we were going to make at all. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. Because you were already writing for Fanside. You're writing all the time. I was doing podcasts all the time with Seeing Stars or with the Mavs Fanatic podcast or whatever. And so I was like, I know I can do this. And I wanted an opportunity. I wanted a way to, to get my name out there and to do something, to be connected with David Locke. I thought that would at least take it to another level, to where it's at least, name association. So that's where it started for me. And so it's wild now that we're 5 years later, and like we kind of barely knew each other, and now, I mean, you're one of my best friends for sure.
I know that's the crazy thing about it, was legit 5 years ago. We were just texting a few days ago saying, there's been like 1,800 something days since then, and we've done pods 1,380 something days of those. And a lot of those pods are obviously us together. And now Nick's one of my closest friends, and gosh, there was so much stuff. Anyway, okay.
Let's listen to the first. Let's go and listen to the first episode now, because.
So now you get the context of it. This is our first one working together. Of like, all right,
we're committed to this.
Yeah, we're committed to this. So I want you guys to embrace the awkwardness. This is just a great moment. These first few minutes.
Ace. See participating stores for details.
Great digital insert.
Welcome to Locked On Mavs. We are locked on. My name is Nick Angstadt. I am a writer at MavsFanatic.com, and joined with me, as always, Isaac Harris.
As always. I guess we just now get rolling. As
always, this is the first time. If you are listening to this right now and you are very confused, I can completely understand. Jack and Mike.
No, pause it. Woo! So Jake,
were you watching This Is Us back then?
Or so I was watching Titanic. So Jake Kemp was the guy that hosted the show before. He's a friend of the pod now. He's been on a bunch of times, and a host at the Ticket. His Twitter handle is not Jack Kemp. And I always got so confused when I first met him or knew who he was, because his Twitter handle, I always saw his Twitter, and I didn't listen to his show very often. Sorry, Jake. And so I got confused, and I totally just called him Jack instead of Jake, which is probably what his Twitter handle is made for the most, which he probably finds hilarious. But
Jack and Mike.
All
right, let's continue.
Also, wait, can we just go? I said as always because I knew I was going to include that in my intro. I knew that was going to be part of it, and I thought that it was funny where you made fun of it because it was our first time doing this show. As always, it's wait, this is our
5 years. Nick has always said joining me as always.
It's also still not true because we've both hosted with other people.
That's true. That is true. Shout out to my audio. It sounds like I'm calling in from a cave somewhere. And
anyway. What mic were you using back then?
God bless. I guess it was a Blue Yeti.
I was gonna say you had a Yeti first.
I think so. Anyway, let's continue on.
By way of David Locke. So thanks so much to David Locke for reaching out to us to do the Locked On Mavs. So yeah, we'll be taking over this podcast for them. They moved on to bigger and better things, and so now we're moving up. We're moving up to the Locked On family. So thanks so much, guys, for having us. And yeah, so I'm Nick Angstadt. I am a writer.
Are you giving a speech to like your family right now, or I just want to say thank you for having us.
I'm like praying before dinner.
You're so proper, and it's like you're talking to your in-laws. But anyway,
what I said at the beginning. It was a way for us to move up. Like I saw it as a moving up opportunity for myself in this business.
Welcome.
Hello. Welcome.
I am a writer at Mavs Fanatic. Like I said, I do the Mavs Fanatic podcast as well. I also have a podcast called Seeing Stars Podcast, which covers all the Dallas sports teams. So Cowboys, Rangers, Wings, FC Dallas. Dallas Wings, which I just came from a game, hanging out with Skylar Diggins. She took a picture of me, by the way.
I bet she did.
It's true. She took a picture of all the media people that were there.
I was one of the subjects in the picture that she took. So I do that, and I just graduated from Dallas Baptist University. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do with life, as a lot of people are, just out there in the nebulous, trying to figure out how to run my life and live my life. So I'm joined with...
Hold on, pause it.
What do you do?
The nebulous.
Me having a quarter life crisis right in the middle of my first intro, Locked On Mavs.
You really sold the audience on that.
Guys, I'm like, you guys should really listen to me. I have all these podcasts now. I was doing 3 podcasts at that point. A daily, bi-weekly with Fanatic, and then a weekly with Seeing Stars. Guys, I have all these podcasts. I just don't know what I'm doing with my life. That's, it's where we are.
Isaac Harris. Isaac, what do you do? Where are you from?
Man, what do I do? I'm from the great state of Kentucky. And yeah, my wife and I, we moved to Dallas.
You're actually in the great state of Kentucky right now.
That's what it was. You were traveling. You were not there.
Back home, visiting some friends, some family. And it's having fun. It's not as hot here as in Dallas, but
cool. Can we just acknowledge my accent was worse back then? I've really worked on this a lot, and this is honestly a talking point. But like my dad hates that when I say, "Hey, I've really got better at like my accent," because it's something that I've really tried to get better at. I've done a lot of public speaking since I've been in Dallas and stuff. And it kills him because it's like, you're trying to get rid of your like Kentucky roots and stuff. You're not trying to lose your accent.
And you're like, yeah.
Well, kind of.
I am.
Love my home state.
As in Dallas, but
scorcher this week.
Yeah. So, but it's fun. My wife and I, we moved to Dallas some years ago, and I just graduated my master's a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. So. Looking forward to it. I'm the editor at the Smoking Cuban, so it's kind of cool. Nick and I got to know each other over this past year as we were both credentialed reporters. We're both, like I just said, credentialed media for the Dallas Mavericks. So
hashtag we the media, that's us.
Hashtag we the media. So yeah, we go to a lot of the practices, a lot of fun stuff, all the games, all the home games. Yeah.
I used to use that on Mavs Fanatic with Taman all the time, because Taman would start calling out the media for things. Sorry, I'm going to throw Taman under the bus for this for a little bit. Taman would call out the media for things, and I'd be like, "What are we?" and he would be like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "We're media. Like, we're part of the media right now." So every time he would call out the media for something, he'd be like, "The media isn't giving Dennis Smith Jr. his fair shake," and I'd be like, "Well, hashtag we the media, because we're part of this too." So.
Do you care about me going forward any?
No. That's enough of this. You can go listen to it. It's from May 31st, 2017.
You don't have to, guys. You don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we talked about Nerlens' contract. We talked about JJ Barea being brought back as a coach, maybe, and it was right before the draft where they drafted Dennis. So
we actually did like a top 10, like where we're at. So that was a little over a month from the draft, or right around a month. So some initial thoughts on the draft and stuff that year, which is some funny stuff looking back on of Man, we know Markelle Fultz is going to be really good in the NBA. So what about
He should have been though. He should have been. He had all the tools. I was talking myself into Larry Markkinen a lot. Like that was like, you know how you go in swings when you're starting to do draft stuff. Like one player just kind of stands out to you. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow. And then a week later, maybe that player doesn't look as good to you for some reason. But Larry Markkinen, I was having that week on Larry Markkinen.
Philly? That's they hadn't made the trade up to number one yet,
yeah.
so they were sitting at 3. So we're like, yeah, Markelle first, Lonzo second. Who's the perfect fit for Philly? Malik Monk. And,
I thought Monk was going to go really high in that draft, but anyway. So
the days, man.
That's how we got started. We've gone through so many iterations. Like, so I had just graduated from DBU with my bachelor's. You just graduated from DTS, Dallas Theological, with your master's. So like we were just out of college. We were just we were both married, both trying to figure out what we were really gonna do.
I just finished year 8 of post high school, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing another paper ever again.
Yeah, I'm done with that. But yeah, so that's how we started. It's our first episode. What are some big Mavs milestones we've covered over this last 5 years then?
Oh my gosh, man. I wrote down, I spent some time reminiscing this evening of like, man, where are some, I kind of broke it into 2 different categories of like non-basketball and basketball. Cause
there's
like we've been talking about a personal angles to all this, this was before my wife and I, we lived downtown at the seminary there. We didn't have any kids, didn't have a dog. We lived in a tiny little apartment. And, I was biking around Dallas a lot, went to a lot of the practices and all that stuff those first few years. That's why we got to know so many people around the team and meeting players and stuff so much because we had to go to, we were at all these practices. I had the time back then.
And they didn't have tiered media for COVID or anything like that.
Yeah,
so
nothing like that.
We had way more access.
So it was, it's kind of crazy. We've mentioned just how our lives have changed since we've been doing this pod. When we talk about sports every day, 5 days a week for 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot of you guys have been on that ride with us from, hey, announcing pregnancies for, my wife and I, 2 of them, and, taking a few days off. And I seen that first episode of like Isaac's back, and you had like, you incorporated baby into the title. I was like, oh man, that's my first pod since our son was born. And, you had a cross country move and just all this stuff.
Two. I went there and back.
We just you were going to Disney like every weekend, and we had so much stuff that's happened over the past 5 years. But I think for me, I'll look at, can we do non-basketball stuff first? I think one of the cooler things, one of the more proud things I am of this podcast is one of the things we've always tried to make a purpose of this is like, hey, we're going to talk about the Mavs, but we always wanted to build like a community part of it. We always wanted to, share stuff about our lives. We always want to be open. Like I've always been open about, like, I'm a pastor, like I work at a church, and I'm going to incorporate some stuff. I'm not going to be scared to talk about my faith or all of that. I'm not going to lead every podcast with it and say, do you know the Lord and Savior Jesus? I'm not going to do that every time. But, I think that's one of the things about our pod as a whole that I've been so proud of is the amount of you guys that have reached out over the years, that we've talked with so many of you guys about personal stuff in your life, or what, a day that we're late on putting out a podcast, and some of you are writing in saying, man, I'm at 3rd shift right now. It's all those type of messages that always stick with me of, oh dang, like, or, how some of you guys interact with each other about our pod. It's like, there's a community that has kind of formed around the pod from literally people around the world. That's been a lot of fun. But one of the most moments I've seen that in action was the ice storm hits Dallas a few years ago. And, we were talking, we're like, all right, we want to do something here. Can we kind of mobilize our listeners here? And, you guys raised money, our listeners raised money, and we gave over $5,000 to a homeless shelter here in Dallas called Our Calling. And that's just something that always stuck with me of, hey, like, so many of you guys tune in for Mav stuff, but you kind of joined together as a community during that. And we got to, give some money there during a situation that was really tough for the city of Dallas. So anyway, that's just one of the non-basketball moments that will always stick with me.
Yeah, that's an incredible moment. I know both of us have bought houses because of some of the money we've made from this podcast, which is an incredible like run for us. And like glow up from where we started to where we are now. Honestly, our first road trip was just in San Francisco. Like that's a big moment that we should bring up. You and I went like literally just for this podcast. It wasn't like you were doing Mavs.com stuff or I was doing something with another site. It was like literally just for Locked On Mavs. We went to go visit and go on a road trip.
And to be able in a moment, I know you referenced the financial part of it a little bit ago, but as far as buying a house, but to be able to say, hey, we're going to take a little chunk of our podcast paycheck and pay for travel to go here and to cover that, all of that, like we couldn't have done that year one or year two or year three. You know, this is something that's built because you guys have shared this podcast for so long to where now, because of what we make off this pod, we were able to buy a house. We're able to support our families because you guys keep sharing this and keep supporting us and keep subscribing and all of that. So yeah, man.
Basketball moments. The first time I ever got to interview Dirk or talk to Dirk or stand next to Dirk was a really big moment for me. I don't know if you can tell that he's a big figure in my life, favorite athlete of all time, but that was a big moment. And this podcast is part of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, Dirk stuff, you look at basketball stuff, you know, different episodes of ours over the past, 5 years of, Dirk moving up the scoring list, those nights that night against the Lakers, hitting that shot, just remembering the
30K.
The aura in the arena. Dirk's last home game, it was something I'll never forget. Like it's just one of those crazy
Jamal
nights.
Crawford.
And those, those pods after those games, but not, this isn't including anything with the pod, but those nights in the locker rooms waiting for Dirk to come back, especially those last few years, from, all the treatment he'd have after the games and stuff. And us talking to him in the locker room and all those moments of covering Dirk and some community stuff. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day about, I remember I've been watching Dirk go through a nursing home here in Dallas and, meet with fans to a hospital in downtown Dallas before that. I got to see some of these smiles up close from all different stages of life. But other basketball moments for our pod that I will never forget the pod post these is the Dennis press conference. After that was a lot of fun because that was our first draft. That was kind of like our first summer covering the team. So talking about that. The Clippers series, the Clippers game winner in the bubble, the Luka shot during that was just, something that is just wild.
How about the Nerlens trade? You remember the Nerlens trade when you were like, weren't you like driving and you saw the Nerlens trade and we both had to like rush to do an emergency pod?
Well, yeah, that and I put KP trade ! But the KP trade pod will be something that I'll never forget that because I was at a doctor's appointment with my wife and our son. It's like one of those checkups. He was just a few months old, and he's like 6 months old. But I'm like, hey babe, I'm gonna go out to the parking garage real quick. I got to do a pod, and I remember putting the headset in, doing a podcast with you from the parking garage, reacting to the Porzingis trade, and for literally for the next 2 years, that was our highest downloaded episode.
Yeah, it was our number one
ever by a wide margin. But KP trade, the Luka 11-0 run against the Rockets, that was a fun pod. After that, his rookie season, that was kind of like one of the first moments that will always be etched in my brain of, oh man. He might
be really good.
Yeah, that was special. I obviously, a lot of these big moments of this past playoff series, the Game 7 stuff with Phoenix will be something we'll never forget, and all of that. But it's funny. I was looking back through a lot of the pod titles over the past 5 years, and how just some of the random funny stuff. And guys, man, some of you will. If you've been listening for a long time, you'll enjoy some of this. First off, the Mavs Academy Awards. Did we do that 3 years? I know at least 2.
I think we did 3 years. I think we did that 3 years. We skipped it. We skipped it last year because the offseason was so short.
Yeah, and now it's shorter because the team's good. Maybe it's something we did when the team was bad. But man, that was something. It was the most well-produced thing that you spent so much time producing and editing. And it's it would almost be better to bring it back now because we have more listeners.
I was gonna say no one listened to it then. It was one of our lowest performing episodes.
But basically, if you ever never listened before, Nick and I act like we were hosts of the Academy Awards. Yeah, handed out all these awards for the Mavs, fake awards, and it was a lot of fun. And but yeah, the finals flashbacks each year. You know, we've had so many fun guests on. I mean, I have a whole guest like category when I was taking notes of.
We had Deshaun Stevenson that one time.
Oh my gosh, the amount of players and people from Deshaun Stevenson to Harrison Barnes to Luka to Cuban to Theo Pinson recently. There's so many random players that's been on our pod that's went through Dallas. People in the organization. I mean, just that finals flashback. I was looking at that first year we did it, and it was like every day it was Mark Followill, Chuck Cooperstein, all the Skin, and like all these people, telling all these stories. Scott Tomlin, director PR for the Mavs. That's one
of my favorites.
Yeah, one of my favorite episodes we did that during COVID, and him giving these behind the scenes stories of Dirk, right after winning the title, what happened in the locker room when we all seen the video.
He was there.
Yeah, he was one of the few people in the locker room there. And you mentioned the Nerlens situation. I laughed because we had an episode about Hot Dog Gate, and I'm like, oh my gosh, those days.
Hot Dog Gate.
The Nerlens thing was a lot of.
Weren't we sitting next to each other in the media lounge when he walked out?
I don't remember.
I remember the aftermath, sitting there and being there, and then not knowing what I just saw, and just seeing Tim McMahon like stand up and take a picture real quick, and then seeing that picture online, and then realizing what it was.
Yeah, so just the whole Nerlens situation, that was when I got to know Nerlens a little bit, and
to
Rick,
Carlisle's chagrin.
Yeah, Rick really didn't like me ask a question about him. Jiverson versus PJ Dozier. That was like our first debate. Who was going to get that roster spot? Jean Clavel versus PJ Dozier. You were Clavel. I was Dozier fan.
You were right on that one. You killed that one.
He lasted. They didn't do well for the Mavs, but
Dozier's still in the NBA. Like he's a rotation player for the Nuggets. So
yeah. There was an episode titled Kyle Anderson versus Isaac.
I still call him your nemesis when we talk about him on the pod.
There's a backstory to that, obviously, with a tweet that I tweeted out about him flopping, and he responded. The draft.
I'm not flopping. I'm just selling the call. We're like, what's the difference?
Dad taught me how to sell calls. The draft gaff.
Oh yeah, he said my dad. Oh, the giraffe gaff. Oh my gosh. Okay, wait.
Those days.
It was Maxey. Jeff Withey was in that group.
Oh yeah, Salah.
Was Salah in there? Who else was in it? Oh, it was this lineup that Carlisle threw out, and it wasn't even preseason, right? It was like an actual regular season game where it was like 4 7-footers and a guard, and I was just like, "What is happening right now?" I called it the giraffe gaff.
Dennis's dunk contest where he got robbed.
Oh, not another one. Not another one. That's when I really started to hate DJ Khaled, and I just have never been able to look at him the same way since.
The whole DJ Khaled, the whhole Dennis situation, how it got a little hairy
start
there.
To finish.
Especially at the end, where he had the back problem, that was, trying to be kept under wraps there. And, we were under Dennis trade watch, and it was just, he wasn't. Yeah. And it's like, it was weird because he wasn't in the locker room. Then he was gone. It was this whole big thing. But Saddam Shame or Frame.
Oh, yeah.
Those days were a lot of fun. We used to find takes on social media from Mavs fans, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, or whatever, and like kind of put them on the pod until one dude came at us and was like really hard and was like, "I'm going to sue you."
Well, he was like, "That's not Christ-like," and all that kind of stuff. And we were like, "Okay, get out of here."
Like, yeah, but you also had a dumb basketball take. We do too.
Shame.
We used to do Game of Thrones recaps.
Oh, we did. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. We would not do that now.
It was like Game of Thrones finale. We had one episode I was joking with you before that was just like Robert Pattinson as Batman. I'm like, what is this? What
we wanted to throw in random stuff and do like movies or TV or something just to like do bonus episodes, I remember.
Yeah.
Probably because we got like 3 tweets about it. We thought it was really cool.
And then I don't know if you guys know this, but we interviewed Jalen Brunson at Media Day. And but honestly, last media day was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
That was
for
a
us.
big moment too. Yeah.
We also, obviously we had a table at media day and just all the players cycling through and
except KP.
Them.
That was the only. He was the only one that didn't show up.
Yeah, except KB for that. But man, there's been so many fun moments. There's been so many cool things and so many big things that's happened in our country and our world over the past 5 years that whenever you do a talk show, a radio show, a podcast show, as often as we do for 5 days a week, that, you're navigating those waters and stuff. And so many of you guys have, keep on sharing our show and keep on listening to our show in the midst of all the stuff that has happened in our world over the past, 5 years. And so, I mean, any other story, any other reference that we haven't thrown out or talked about, or we have a lot of inside jokes that we randomly throw out.
I mean, the Raccoon Squad is a big one, where the Raccoon Squad started because I eventually, not in the first episode, obviously, but I'd eventually get to What You Got For Me, Isaac, would be my intro for Isaac, which I still do. And Isaac would just share like something in his life. And a lot of times you would start it with something that's not even like remotely related to Mavs coverage at all. And somehow I would try to find a way to steer it back to Mavs. And that was like sort of our game that we played at the beginning of episodes. But we
used to not have to have a bunch of structure.
Yeah, but it was not structured at all, really.
But with the structure came money. So we needed the structure. We needed ad breaks and all of that.
And we got better.
Yeah, and at the beginning, we would talk about so many random things, and you would ask what you got for me, and we'd have like 5 minutes worth of just random talk about, hey, what TV shows are you watching?
About Robert Pattinson as Batman.
Yeah, Nick would ruin a TV show and spoil it for somebody, and then somebody would get really mad.
So, okay, when we make that joke, I spoiled 13 Reasons Why Season 2. A lot of you are thinking, I didn't know there was a season 2. Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that there was a season 2. And I spoiled something small. I don't even think it was that even big, but I got this long DM the next day about, I don't listen to this for spoiling TV shows and blah, blah. I was like, dude, it was not worth it to get that mad about that show. It was not good. It was not good. Nah. The Raccoon Squad, though, so that's what we call anybody that listens to the show. Now we call anybody that listens to the show 5 days a week, we call you part of the Raccoon Squad, because Isaac had this pear tree in his backyard, and these pears would come down, and he kept having these raccoons come into his yard, and then he like told that story, and it was kind of like an innocuous story that didn't really mean anything or resonate.
No, it meant nothing.
And then a couple listeners were like, hey, when the podcast drops, we're like those raccoons that come into your yard and are like ready for the podcast to like drop. As soon as it drops, we're like right there, ready to go. And so that's when we started calling the Raccoon Squad, the logo, and then all that stuff came. And that's what that
a lot of raccoon gifts over the years that have been sent to us, and some comments here and there, but so yeah, man, we can't thank you enough. I think one of the cooler moments now is when we hear of newer people that like new to us that listen to the pod that were like, it's kind of like unexpected.
Yeah.
Whenever Doris Burke is reaching out to David Locke, and it's like, hey, I'm listening to the Locked On shows. I'm listening to Locked On Mavs before I cover a Mavs game. It's one of the underrated like cool moments for me was Nico Harrison press conference. We go over and we shake Sean Sweeney's hand.
Oh yeah.
We shake St. Pierre's hand, and
St.
talking
James
to
hand.
Yeah, St. James, St. Pierre. Where did I get that?
I was gonna say, isn't that a goalie in the NHL?
I was like, what? But
St. Pierre.
We're talking to Sweeney, and he's like, "Oh, Locked On Mavs." Yeah, I was talking to my brother the other day. We're like, we're gonna start, listening to the show. Now we're coming to Dallas stuff, and it's like, it's those type of moments that you hear.
That same media day, St. Marshall came up and gave us both hugs and said that she had listened to the show and watches the show in her office.
Yeah, so it's those moments of like, man, there's so many, the amount of people in the organization have reached out randomly, like, oh, man, we're debating this in the office. I love those moments. I love hearing, whether it's an organization or an office building or a family, the father-son duos that have wrote in and said, man, we listen to this on the way to school each morning.
Yeah.
It's people overseas, literally, we've referenced this before, but people in the military that's been literally listening in forts and in bunkers. I think, one good
seriously
said he's listened to our pod in a bunker before. And just, I love that this pod has literally reached a lot of people over the past 5 years. It's been a lot of fun. We're not stopping. It feels kind of like, hey, we're ending here.
Yeah, this is it, guys. We're done.
But 5 years is something that I know we joked at the beginning of, it's like, hey man, let's just see if this works.
Yeah.
And the fact that like, man, we've got to 5 years of this, we felt like, hey, let's just put this out here because a lot of you guys have hopped on board over the past few years and asked these questions and DMs and whatever. And it's like, all right, let's just put an episode out and reminisce and tell us backstory and all of that.
Incredible run. Couldn't have done it without Isaac Harris. Honestly, I don't think this show would be nearly as good or as well liked without him.
I mean, if they want me to start, doing the soundboard and everything.
Some people have said one of the best moments of the last year was when you got the soundboard in the hotel room at on the road trip.
Listen, Nick is the brains of. I say it all the time. I say it in any setting that Nick's name is brought up. He's one of the most talented people in the whole business. So this pod, literally, it doesn't happen without Nick at all. So I'm just the throw in.
That's not true. Remember all those solo episodes you did this year when the Mavs lost games over the weekend?
Yeah. And remember all the feedback we got and like, hey, this pod audio sucks. And we know that Isaac did it, but
that is not true.
It's a lot of fun. And and speaking of that real quick, I put this note when I was writing down notes from over the past 5 years. I put this line at the bottom. I said, hey, there's been a lot of hate, but there's even more love.
Yeah.
And it comes with the territory. It still stings sometimes. You're not gonna lie. It's like, man, yeah, when I get that dumb, DM, sometimes it's somebody just like coming at your weight or coming at your family or something just because they don't like a basketball take. It still is like, okay, shouldn't bother me. There's no reason to. Bothers you a little bit, bothers me a little bit,
yeah.
But man, those messages are outweighed by 20 plus
yeah.
by you guys who have reached out and listened and all of that. And it just comes with the territory when more people start listening to your content.
Way nicer than Suns fans, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh, Suns fans. Guess I need to get in that boxing ring or something.
Incredible. There you go. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us, listening to Locked On Mavs over the years. We're keeping going. 5 years. Hey, 5 more years. Where are we going to be in 5 years?
What's our 10-year episode look like?
Ooh, that'd be incredible. But yeah, there you go.
Live show in Dallas this year?
Oh,
possibly.
That is hopefully in the cards.
Our next step.
That is in the cards for us for sure. All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us for 5 years on Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.